Mark Rogers TV, the voice of college football, breaking down the game we love with the best broadcasters in the nation. We go to Alabama and Tuscaloosa and Gary Harris, WVUA 23. All right, Gary, you mentioned Mac Jones. He's putting together Heisman-type numbers, 27 touchdowns, 3 interceptions, 76% completion percentage. But he doesn't necessarily get the credit that some of the other guys get because it's assumed that he's got the best playmakers and so forth and so on, which he does. But still, he is playing lights out. Maybe this SEC championship game becomes a bit of a Heisman finalist showcase for these two guys.
I think it could. I mean, touchdown passes is the big area where Trask has an advantage. But let's keep in mind, too, Florida has no running game. Trask plays basically the entire game, every game. Mac comes out of a lot of games. Plus, Alabama, Najee Harris has scored 20 touchdowns, Mark. You know, and they have a dominant running game. So when they're in the red zone, more times than not, they're running the ball in. I think if Mac Jones and this Alabama offense, Steve Sarkisian, were just dead set on him throwing 40-something touchdown passes, he could. Everywhere else, they're pretty even statistically in terms of the completion percentage and the quarterback rating. And I do think it's a two-man race. I'd like to think that Devontae Smith could be a candidate. But you and I both know a wide receiver is not going to win that award unless he's also returning kicks and punts and maybe playing cornerback or something like that. And Najee Harris, as good as he is, he's not going to win it. So I do think it's down to Jones and Trask. Trevor Lawrence is, had he not missed some games, he's going to be the number one overall pick, but I don't think he's going to win the Heisman. And I think Justin Fields' body of work, Mark, just isn't large enough, particularly now that it's not going to play Ohio State. Ohio State's not going to play Michigan this Saturday. So I think it's Jones, and I think it's Trask. And, I think it's easy to say Trask is more important to his team because of the things that we mentioned with Alabama, all the playmakers, the offensive line, and so forth, even though Florida obviously has playmakers, starting with Pitts, the tight end. But I think that Trask gets more credit for Florida's offensive success than Mac Jones does for Alabama's. But you said it. It's probably going to come down to this SEC championship game. And whichever quarterback performs the best, but particularly if his team wins the game, I have a strong hunch that the winning quarterback in that game, if he plays well, is going to win the Heisman Trophy. You agree with me there? I
do.
I think it's going to come down to that.
I think there's a possibility, though, that if Bama wins as expected, especially as a 14-point favorite, if they win a 3-point game, let's say it's a 48-45 shootout, and Trask is ridiculous, that he still hangs on to the hardware because of the perception that he had to do more on that team. And you mentioned Devonta Smith, and I didn't want to let him go because I think we may see him go on to the NFL, and not everybody is realizing that they're watching a legendary career here. 80 catches, 15 touchdowns, and of course it all started, at least in regards to national attention, with the game-winning touchdown reception in the national championship game, and that is 3 years ago. Gary, we appreciate you making the time for us. We know between games and conference championship coming up and, of course, all this recruiting, you've got all sorts of stuff on your plate, so we thank you so much.
Well, it's always a pleasure to be with the voice of college football, brother. I tell you that. You do a great job, and I appreciate you having me on.